Hello and welcome to the Money Movement, a show where we explore the issues and ideas in this brave new world of digital currency and blockchains. This is our 20th episode of the Money Movement, which is exciting, and we've got a great episode which we're going to talk about in a second. But I actually first wanted to mention that next week, the 21st episode of the Money Movement, we're going to do an Ask Me Anything. And so if you're interested in asking me anything, that's your opportunity. You can tweet at us, and we're going to be promoting it in a few places, and that'll be a live AMA next week, next Thursday at 1 p.m., same time, same place. So this week, we're talking about USDC meets Algorand. For those that aren't familiar, Algorand came on the scene in 2017. It was a blockchain project that offered the promise of bringing radical improvements around the scaling and speed of blockchain transactions, with a particular eye on financial applications. And really, the Algorand team has delivered in a very big way with blockchain infrastructure that can scale even to potentially billions of users, tens of millions of daily transactions, all with negligible transaction fees. And I think unlike first or second generation blockchains, Algorand's platform was designed from the ground up to address many of the unique requirements of global payment applications and financial networks. And these are, I think, in our minds, really critically important attributes for the stablecoin ecosystem, as large financial institutions, global consumer fintech firms, and others around the world begin to add digital dollars to the mix of products and services that they're bringing to businesses and clients around the world. So in pursuit of the sort of ultimate goal of USDC being a standard protocol that can be used really, really widely as a digital dollar on the internet, Center Consortium, which governs the USDC protocol and standards and a variety of facets of the operation of USDC, embarked on a multi-chain USDC framework earlier this year. And at the time, we announced that Circle was entering into a partnership with Algorand to bring USDC to the Algorand blockchain. Last week, I believe, or very recently, Center Consortium announced that Algorand had become an official chain supporting USDC. And Circle today, in fact, rolled out broad support for the Algorand blockchain in our platform services offerings, including the ability to seamlessly do swaps across Ethereum-based USDC and Algorand-based USDC, which is really key for interoperability. So this week, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Algorand. We're going to talk about stablecoins and the future of financial applications on blockchains. And it's really with great pleasure that we're bringing Algorand founder, Turing Award winner, and MIT professor Silvio Micali to the show. He's going to share his thoughts around the state of the Algorand blockchain and major innovations coming down the road, including the implications of having a digital dollar like USDC on Algorand. And then we're going to turn to Algorand CEO, Steve Kokinos, to discuss the trajectory of Algorand, the organization, the global community, the ecosystem, the industry, and use case applications that we're seeing for Algorand in 2020 and beyond, and really what's shaping up in this space. So with that, we're very excited to welcome Silvio. It's great to see you.
Great. Thank you very much, Jeremy. Great to talk to you and your audience today.
Excellent. Well, I love to start with an origin story, and obviously I think many people have followed your career and your history, but maybe just for folks here who haven't, just very briefly, a little bit about your history and how you came to fall in love with crypto and pursue Algorand.
Oh, great. So I started like a computational theorist, proof systems, logical schemes, and then have a long long time interest in cryptography, and then distributed computation, and then evolved into economic mechanisms. And so suddenly, somehow, finally, I heard about crypto in the sense of not cryptography in my case, but the cryptocurrency, and says, oh, wow, that is really at the intersection of all these fields, cryptography and distributed computation and economic mechanism. That is a paradise. Let me learn about it. I started learning about it, and I confirmed that it was, a great idea. But somehow the solutions seemed to me quite inelegant. And because somehow criticizing is always easy and constructing is a bit harder, I decided to lock myself up for a few months and try to see if I could throw my hat in the arena and design things in a different way.
Oh, that's fabulous. And I think this synthesis of so many different, I think, pretty significant and advanced fields is part of what makes this all interesting. I know for the legal profession, this is a very challenging and interesting area, and certainly within fiduciary industries as well. Let's talk a little bit about that breakthrough. When you went off for a few months, what was the core breakthrough of Algorand? In layman's terms, what were the elegant solutions that you were trying to bring forward as compared to the inelegant solutions perhaps that you had encountered?
So, well, the hardest part in a blockchain is not to make sure that this database cannot be corrupted, but the hardest part is to decide the next block. Who should decide and how does it become a common knowledge and not just an individual choice? And so somehow everybody has in mind a long diluted process. Somehow I append my block to the longest chain that I see, assume the longest chain that I see as a block that was produced by you, Jeremy. I append my block to yours. This is interpreted like a vote that your block is correct. And if somebody appends her block to mine, she's voting that my block and your block are both correct. And so that is a kind of a longer process. And the more time passes, the longer the chain becomes, and somehow gives you confidence that these blocks are going to remain in the chain. So what I felt is I understand this dilution and drip consensus is necessary to be fast. But I decided, can't we just bite the bullet and agree on one block in such a fashion that you never had to come back? So I agree on the block, and then now becomes everybody, not only me, but the entire community agrees on the block. The block is permanent. Next block, we agree on the block, next block. And every time we add that block, we know that we have not to look for the longest chain because there is only one chain. And so I decided in my adventures in distributed computation land that there was a quintessential algorithm called the Byzantine agreement, no adjectives that modified make it weaker, but the original Byzantine agreement. And I say, why don't we Byzantine agree on each block? Well, the problem was that at that time, the fastest algorithm for a practical application allowed maybe 12 participants. And if we want to have a blockchain like with millions or billions of participants, forget it, that was not cutting the deal. So the need was to invent from scratch a new Byzantine agreement protocol that scaled at that level. And so that I would say is really the fundamental thing. And the other one, if I can actually, you need a second one, is to have somehow to form committees which are somehow where committee members are not selected by me, heaven forbid, or for somebody else, but actually randomly self-select to be part of this agreement. And of course, if you say randomly self-selected looks bad, because if I'm a bad person, I self-select myself all the time, not randomly. And so, and the idea is to use this verifiable random function to guarantee that there is a cryptographically fair selection in which I can select myself. And if I am by running a cryptographically fair individual lottery, and it's like a slot machine whose lever you can pull it once, And if I win, I have a winning ticket, proving to the entire world that I am a member of the committee to approve the next block. And if I don't win, I have nothing to show for, and therefore my opinion is ignored. And so that essentially is the essence, that you get this winning ticket if you get it. And if you get it, you propagate it together with your opinion up or down about the block. And why this is secure? Because the pulling the lever of a slot machine is a microsecond. It is distributed because anybody who has one algo, one token, can participate to this lottery. So simple it is. And so, this is also secure because if an adversary wants to corrupt somehow the members of the committee, it doesn't really know who should corrupt, this lady in Shanghai, this other guy in Paris. It doesn't know, because the winner is going to be the winner of a lottery. Nobody can predict who is going to win the lottery. And so, once we propagate the winning ticket and the opinion about the block, I can become known to be a member of this committee. I can be corrupted, but at this point it's too late to corrupt me, because my winning ticket and opinion about the block are virally propagated on the network, and therefore the adversary cannot put it back in a bottle no more than a government can put back in a bottle a message virally propagated by WikiLeaks. So the system is secure because beforehand you don't know whom to corrupt, and ex post, after the facts, is a bit too late to corrupt.
Yeah, I remember you giving a talk at the MIT Bitcoin Expo, or I forget what they call it, and I was very struck by what you were outlining, and it struck me as at the time, what I felt like was one of the best ideas out there. Here we are today, and the Algorand blockchain went from that set of Genesis ideas into a living, breathing, operating, secure, global, tamper-proof transaction and data storage machine, which is pretty remarkable. Maybe just talk for a minute about what is the capacity of Algorand today? Kind of it a couple years and then a lot of significant R&D and work and launching, and now getting an ecosystem built. But what is the state of the Algorand blockchain today?
Well, the state of the Algorand blockchain is strong. So, and it becomes stronger too. So first of all, we actually do scale, and not only we scale in number of transactions, but actually we scale in the consensus. So everybody who is willing to participate to the consensus, we lower the bar of participation so low that anybody who has an interest and has one algo can actually participate to consensus. Then it scales and is also a number of transactions, but I want to make sure that these are transactions on-chain, properly and honestly counted, like some transaction off-chain that I can imagine where I can do trillions of them.
Yeah.
And moreover, I want to say that these are transactions that actually are sophisticated, not just ordinary payment. I mean, there is nothing so simple about an ordinary payment, as you know, particularly if it is internationally and so on and so forth. But these are actually layer one smart contracts. So an ordinary payment, as simple and as secure as an ordinary payment in Algorand is you have an asset that I want, I have an asset that you want, and we want atomically, namely in an undivisible transaction, we exchange our assets without the help of anybody, right? Without chaperones, without financial friction, we can transact. I don't care if I push the button first to send you my asset, because I do know that unless you send mine yours, the asset never leaves my hands. And so this is also one transaction that is atomic in Algorand. And a lot of these other layer one smart contracts live at the same consensus level, so with the same security, and they are native to the protocol. And I think this will simplify a lot of things. And so this is the current status, and we are going to make it even better. Our transactions are going to go multiplied by order of magnitude anyway, and we are going to get quantum resilience, and we are going to get a lot of other good stuff in the years to come.
Yeah, that's fantastic. As I've heard you talk in the past about your vision for the use of blockchains, here, I think we generally are talking about things like stablecoins, payments, financial applications, and we can talk about that. But this architecture that you've created, it's quite generalized, and it can be used to store verified data in a really wide range of use cases. What are some of the other uses for Algorand that you're really excited about, whether they're already projects or just things that you think should be built?
All right. So then, first of all, I want to say that the democratization of finance continues to be a main goal, and a shared goal. In fact, I believe that not only we want to put at the hands at the reach of everybody, of men or women in the street, very sophisticated financial tool, because the first form of freedom is financial independence, and that's number one. But that said, so blockchains that are is going to be announced soon. Some country, which is, I would say, known to you and to others, is going to use it to implement a national call list. Okay, yeah. So in other, do not call me, and when the blockchain somehow guarantees what I said and what I did not say. And by the way, this also enables, flips the side, because it's a very easy step to go from a do not call me or I want to be called. You can push my product to me, but guess what? I want to be paid, if you don't mind.
A great use. A great use of this public data set, right? And everybody can see it. It's perfectly verifiable. There's no manipulation or fraud. It's fantastic.
Exactly. And so finally, rather than being asked always the product, somehow to say, I want to be paid for my services, to given fair consideration to your product. But now another example, I believe that we are going to have a not trusted transaction we are introducing. That is the joint effort of our community, and but also somehow trusted communication. So strange enough, so I believe that the blockchain properly used, don't ask me for details, because we are going to keep it under the radar still, but we want to use it for doing certified email. So you want to say, make sure that not only sending email is easy, but I want to say that when I send it, I know and I can prove that you got it, and that is elevates to and the use can be so massive, and the trick is going to be how to make sure that such a massive use can actually be handled by the blockchain. So this blockchain is the gift that keeps on giving, because no day passes by that we at Algorand or US Circle or a center and everybody else in the world thinks of new ways of applying this technology. Is fantastic.
Yeah, well, I think certainly one of the things that has attracted me about the blockchain space as a whole, and Algorand specifically, is the generalizability of this into so many different domains where verifiable information is so key, and it's such a fundamental challenge with the existing internet architecture that we're all facing. Well, so I think, as you know, from our partnership and work together, sort of fintechs, banks, investment banks, central banks, more significant financial institutions are getting involved. Scalability is of paramount concern. Security, of course, is of paramount concern. But what has the history of scalability been in blockchains, and why are so many financial institutions excited about Algorand from a scalability perspective?
But scalability, I think that nobody wants to have a blockchain to just play with friends and family. I mean, the world is a large place, and we need a scalable blockchain to really interact with the world at large. But as I was saying before, how do we interact? It's not only a question of posting transactions, but actually of engaging, for instance, in smart contracts. I think that is one of the main gifts of the blockchain. And the scalability of a smart contract has been for years more in doubt than the scalability of ordinary transactions and or consensus. So I really believe that the world wants, this smart contract at scale, and that is going to be paramount. So not only just ordinary transaction, but as smart contracts as well. And so we have actually architecting, and next year we are going to unveil our platform. By the way, the same way that this platform is going to be as innovative in smart contracts as our consensus protocol has been innovative. And so don't expect the usual, but expect something that really scales and so somehow prevents blocks to be delayed because they have to process smart contracts. The blockchain continues and the smart contracts have their own track with the same scalability, security, and decentralization that have characterized Algorand.
It's very exciting, and I think one of the things that we've remarked on, and a lot of what motivated us with USDC has been this base expectation that eventually value exchange or simple transactions, right, would become effectively ubiquitous and free and instant. But the real value is the programmability of that, and if you can have a trusted, verifiable, scalable kind of compute engine for these fiduciary trust applications, that is what really unleashes the business model innovation in commerce and finance and other things. I guess an obvious question related to some of the announcements we've recently made is, what role do you think USDC can play in the Algorand ecosystem?
Well, let me start with the obvious, right? So somehow we are going to create together and the rest of the community all kinds of new assets, right? And the people will enjoy using them, owning them, and so on and so forth. But the first problem we're going to have is evaluating them, giving a value to these assets. And I really believe that USDC is going to play a major role in creating somehow a common reference system in which we actually, because everybody understands what the value of the dollar is, and but it is going to be like, if you want, a flywheel in this very complicated mechanism. That said, then we have actually our particular use and reliance of USDC and stable coins. And if you promise don't to grill me before time, for instance, speaking of smart contracts that you believe and we agree that are really one of the major gifts of a blockchain, is going to be, we think that there should not be gas in our
right.
smart contract, but we should use stable coins in order to somehow pay for the execution of this thing. Yeah. Because very often people are say the contract is expensive, the contract is low, and even worse, I cannot even budget for how much money should I put aside to run my smart contract. Right. So we are going to architecture in a way in which we are going to hide this away from the consumer, and they can budget properly for the smart contract we want to execute. And so this is going to be a piece of a bigger architecture that we have in mind for smart square contract, we call them, because they're going to be smart contracts, but for a change are going to be really smart. So.
I love it. I love it. I think, yes, using a stable coin as the pricing mechanism on the compute and other functions is obviously, I think, will be very helpful for developers and the ecosystem. So maybe last question for you. I mean, you've moved at, I think, breathtaking speed. I know these things always, sometimes as entrepreneurs, they take longer than we hope. They take a long time. But I feel like you guys have executed really well at a really great pace and continue to, very high level. What are the major advancements in the next 2 to 3 years? I think you've touched on the smart contract execution environment being on par in terms of scalability and speed, and I'm sure there's lots of other goodies. What else is on the horizon that you think is going to be a breakthrough?
Well, so one thing is going to be a blockchain interoperability. So we have to understand that if we want to have being in a market, to be the sole player in a market, you don't have a market. So there is going to be also a market of blockchains, and certain blockchains are doing better at doing certain things. We expect this to be happen because there is a good and specialization. But as you want to service your particular assets, you may want to bring them to a blockchain where it's going to be best served. You want to transfer their asset and be sure it can be transferred back post-execution, or that you are welcome to join a blockchain and then live there because you know that you can get up and leave anytime. Yeah. And so somehow this interoperability has been, like in blockchain world, an aspiration. And I believe that it's very good to start with aspiration. Our aspirations as humans, we should be as high as we can, but sooner or later, technology has to sustain these aspirations, otherwise it becomes just a dream, right? Which is different from an aspiration. So blockchain interoperability, I think, is going to be what we are going to focus, and to make sure that actually is going to be done in a distributed fashion. Mm-hmm. Because right now, if I want to transfer, say, an asset from a red chain to a blue chain, two things are true. I trust the red chain because my asset is in the red chain, and I trust the blue chain because I want to transfer my asset there. But right now, I should not trust anything else. And then right now, we are actually having this centralized token bridge in which you say, yeah, trust me, who I am John Doe, and I can guarantee you that to the blue chain that this asset no longer exists on the red chain and is open for sale on the blue chain. So who is John Doe? Right? So, well, okay, if you don't like John Doe, we can make free Jane D, John Doe, and Jim Da, and who cares? Who are these people? So what we want is that, you have to trust only the chain and nothing else. So we must find a way to express the will of an entire blockchain in some fashion that is understood by other blockchain, and really is not at the whims. I'm not at the captive to anybody in particular. I think we need this to have really the marketplace that things.
We're on the same page there. Our vision.
Perfect.
Multi-chain USDC, and USDC is a protocol that can work across these. Obviously, things like token swaps. You might depend on a governance mechanism or a regulated intermediary, and there's some degree of trust there. But in the grand scheme, it is no substitute for what you're describing as well. Well, excellent, Silvio. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really want to thank you.
Likewise. Good to see you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
So wonderful to have Silvio on, and I think animates this technology in really incredible ways, and just so excited to see what comes out of his continued innovation and work as we go forward. I want to turn now to Algorand's CEO, Steve Kokinos. Steve joins us to talk about the broader global community that is building around Algorand, the industries and use cases that we're seeing, right here and now, and what's shaping up in the year ahead. Welcome, Steve.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jeremy. Great to be here.
Excellent, thank you. So let's just start with some basics. Basics about Algorand Foundation, basics around Algorand and its commercial endeavors. Kind of where is that today, and kind of what's that trajectory look like?
Yeah. So Algorand launched, a public permissionless network about 15 months ago. I think we've seen a lot of really good growth. The way that the project is segmented, the Algorand Foundation is responsible for governance of the public protocol, along with several other areas, continue to grow the community and focus there. Algorand Inc., which is a US company, is focused on core development, really core research and core development of the protocol itself, and continues to be the core developer today, and expect to continue to do that. And I think, led by Silvio, we have really interesting research that's gone on, and I think the response overall to the launch of the network and kind of continued technological innovation has been really great. We have nodes run on every continent except Antarctica. Very geographically distributed network. There's about 400 projects and companies that are building applications or supporting Algorand today, and we've seen a lot of growth in terms of new wallets and users in response to applications deploying on chain. We just crossed about 5 million users a few weeks ago and are seeing continued strong growth there. So, really excited, I think, not only at the response of the tech, but excited to see people using what we've built in really interesting ways.
So that's a great segue to, USDC is now an on-chain asset on Algorand. On-chain financial applications, I think, are huge. Let's talk a little bit about that. What are the kind of segments, use cases? Where do you think USDC is going to get applied first, and where do you think it grows within the Algorand ecosystem?
Yeah, well, I think, and I know Sylvia mentioned sort of the idea that you need a consistent unit of measure across assets. I think if you look at some of the key primitives that we brought into Layer 1, one is the ASA framework, so the ability to create assets in any form and manage them very flexibly. Atomic transfers are another, and Layer 1 smart contracts are another. So the ability to sort of execute anything that you need at the full speed of the chain. And I think that one of the priorities we've given is scalability, but not at the expense of either decentralization or security. And I think especially for financial applications, security is very important. And so when we look at financial applications, we think they take really a few different forms. One are new emergent applications, especially in kind of DeFi area. We see USDC as really the fuel behind a lot of how those applications run. The second is we're starting to see a lot of interesting activity in traditional finance and also payments. And I think if you think about people starting to use crypto for more retail use cases, starting to use it at higher transactional velocity, they need both kind of a stable coin like USDC, but also a platform like Algorand that actually can and was designed from the beginning to scale to hundreds of millions or billions of users without changing the performance characteristics. And then ultimately we're seeing, I think, other forms of currency emerge. The Marshall Islands recently announced that they're launching their national currency on Algorand. So I think we're going to start to see more central bank digital currencies in this. And so I think if you take a step back, what we really think about is, what forms of financial products are going to sort of come next as you bring these assets on chain. How do you transact around those assets? And I think really this idea of programmable money that I know you've talked about a lot is something that we're really passionate about. And I think that the primitives we've created are uniquely well suited to enabling. And so we think about it both from kind of a technology standpoint, but also about the community that you need to build and the asset diversity that you need to have on chain to really make the ecosystem useful.
That's really helpful, Steve. Let's maybe just drill in a little bit. Algorand has entered into a partnership with Center Consortium around becoming an official chain, and then this partnership with Circle as well around supporting Algorand across our new suite of platform services. Why are these partnerships important from your perspective?
Well, I think they're important for a number of different reasons. One, we believe really strongly that a blockchain like Algorand, ultimately is a utility and should be a public utility that anybody can use. And I think one of the if you think back, today, if you think about like even just basic utilities that you have at your house, it's what, water, electricity, and probably used to be phone, but today it's internet, not phone anymore. We think the blockchain needs to move in that direction. And I think partnerships with, projects like Center and Circle are really fundamental, because I think one of the big differences in the decentralized world is that, we can't build all of the things that are needed for a healthy ecosystem ourselves. We need people to be going out and kind of moving forward in their own areas. And ultimately that where we want to focus is on innovation and technology and building the right tools and the right frameworks so that great applications can come and deploy. And I think definitely stable assets like USDC are of critical importance. And I give an example. Republic is a project that's launched on Algorand recently, and they are a crowdfunding and sort of investment platform. Republic is a security token, a registered security token in the US. and they want to be able to issue dividends to their users via atomic swaps. And so they're going to do that by effectively issuing dividends using USDC on chain with Algorand, and that's going to be the way that they provide kind of USD value for the investments people have made. And I think that's like a really, I think, powerful example of how all these different things work together, where there's people taking advantage of the platform, people taking advantage of USDC, and ultimately end users that are able to participate in financial applications that simply, didn't exist in a traditional world.
The idea that you could own an asset and it's just like, streaming out dividends to you instantly, just into your wallet, it's pretty powerful. I love that. I love that. I think it's digital securities, I think are certainly a sweet spot for you guys. And we hopefully will play a big part in that as well. I think related to ecosystem, obviously, other blockchain projects have varying levels of history. Some have been around since, Bitcoin for a very long time, Ethereum since 2015. You guys launched last year. So there's obviously these arcs and people build communities around them. Right now, obviously DeFi is really hot, and Ethereum's, strained under the weight of those applications, and that's making usability for a variety of applications challenging. Do you see this as a window of opportunity for Algorand to kind of step out and get in front of not just DeFi developers, but developers on blockchains in general, to say, hey, third generation blockchains are here. You don't have to wait for Ethereum 2. What's your take on that?
For sure. I mean, I think that definitely Ethereum has built a really interesting community and clearly, has a variety of applications. I think at the same time, if you're trying to build a business and you're building it on a blockchain where, what it's going to cost you to run that application and what it's going to cost your users to transfer assets around is unknown, I think that's a very difficult thing to do. So I think as far as sort of existing applications, definitely I think we've tried to tailor what we have in a way that we think will be attractive. And I think, scalability and performance are important. We think decentralization is also very important as well. We see a lot of projects that have made decentralization compromises in order to achieve performance, and we don't feel that's the right way to go about it. At the same time, I guess the other thing we think about though is the constraints that a lot of the first or second generation platforms pose have kept people from being able to deploy applications of scale in a meaningful way. So if you look at Props as an example, who deployed recently on Algorand, they brought over 4 million users that they migrated from a permissioned chain. And the reason they had it in a permission setting wasn't because they wanted privacy. It was because there was simply no other way that they could get the performance they needed. But they really favor transparency and being on a public network. And I think what's really exciting about an application like that is that it's, really millions of new users to the crypto community that weren't in it before and are excited about their application, which is about, loyalty points and sort of earning money for using different applications. So I think it's a really cool idea, but I think from our perspective, when you look at the size of the crypto community today, even though it's vibrant, it's still very small compared to the remainder of the world. There's only probably a couple 100,000 developers that build blockchain applications today, but there's almost 20 million that build mobile and web applications. Yeah. The same is true in in terms of just retail consumers out in the world. There's billions that need to be introduced to digital money and decentralized systems. And I think largely the way they'll do that is through interesting applications that deliver value to them. And so for us, what we're really focused on, more than necessarily worrying too much about what goes on in the existing crypto community, is how do we encourage new applications that can generate scale quickly and really show the power of blockchain platforms and decentralized platforms and introduce people to digital money at a scale and in ways that haven't really been done before. And so I think that's when you look at the developer tools we've built and the way we've approached the technology, it's really kind of with those things in mind. So I think definitely, by the way, the DeFi world is super interesting right now. I think what's fascinating about it is when you look at how DeFi is starting to approach things like governance and financial applications, what we're seeing now are really financial tools and applications that A, have never existed before, and B, couldn't have existed in a traditional setting. And so to me, that's definitely exciting. It's something we want to see more of in Algorand for sure. I think it's kind of part of a bigger story.
Yeah. I think we share a lot of those views. Maybe last question, which is, I always ask people to put on their vision cap or their future looks. Given the conversations that you're in, given what you're seeing that's happening, given the interest from a lot of different types of players in the industry here, what do you think is going to surprise people over the next, say 24 months? And it relates to the last question about, mainstream apps, things like that. But, what is going to surprise us? And that, obviously I'm thinking of that in the context of applications that might get built on Algorand or use things like USDC. But what are the things that we should be on the lookout for?
Well, I think it's an interesting time. I know, a few years ago, if you look at what was going on during sort of the, Bitcoin boom days, it was very retail driven. And I think it was a very early time in the market. I think a few years on, I think what's been encouraging to us is the seriousness that large institutions and the resources that large institutions are putting into really thinking about long-term investments around digital money and blockchain and digital assets, that countries are doing the same. And so I think the seriousness of those discussions, and I think the likelihood of that helping generate scale will probably surprise a lot of people as it starts to really hit the market. At the same time, I'm not sure it should really be a surprise. China has announced they're going to issue a central bank digital currency. They're being very aggressive about it. It was recently announced there's BSN, which is going to be the Chinese blockchain network. Algorand is one of 5 public chains that'll be permitted by the Chinese government to operate in China. And so I think what we're starting to see now are kind of the early signs that some of the scale and some of the bigger applications are going to come. And I think that that's an indicator of what we'll start seeing in other parts of the world as well. So I think, kind of the underpinnings are being built today. And I feel pretty confident that we're going to see, not just millions, but probably, hundreds of millions of users using the kinds of applications that we're building in, the coming years.
We are excited to see that as well, and I think we share your optimism for the next couple of years on that as well. Steve, thank you so much for joining, and of course for the work that we're doing together. Really excited to see what transpires from that. And,
thanks so much for having me, Jeremy. We love working with you guys, and it's always great to see you.
Excellent. All right, have a great day, Steve.
You too. See you.
Thank you. Well, it's great to connect with leaders that are innovating in the fundamentals of this technology. Very, very excited to see what developers are going to do with this. As I noted earlier, we launched today a whole guide to using Algorand with USDC for convertibility between USDC on Algorand and Ethereum. And so some pretty cool stuff out there, and we're expecting to see a lot of developer activity. As noted at the start of the episode, next week, we're going to do our first Money Movement AMA. So spread the word, fire us questions, fire me questions. Be excited to do that, and hope to hear from as many of you as possible. So until next time, stay well, stay safe, and stay informed.